So I'm Phil Metzler, recording this for the Goshen Historical Society, this oral history with Glen Miller and with Doug Risser. Could you just start off, Glen, by just sharing when you were born and where?
Okay. Well, I was born in Elkhart, Indiana. You could see Miles Laboratories from the back of our house in 19. Well, that's where we wound up. I was really born in Mishawaka. But that was our first house that my dad owned. And the school was right across the alley, so that was pretty convenient. But the most interesting part of my life was when my dad had a farmer that offered him a barn if he'd tear it down. And that was near Capitol Avenue in Mishawaka, Indiana. So my dad tore the barn down, built a house on Capitol Avenue, and had no interior plumbing, and I had a pump at the sink. My mother had a kerosene stove. The toilet was outside. Had a half acre of ground, which she planted. My dad got fire hose. We had a creek running through the back of the property. He dammed up the creek at the back of our property, put a pump in there, pumped water in the fire hose, which I had to change in between the rows that my mother was growing vegetables, and watered the garden. Then my young brother Charles, 10 years younger than I, when he was born, they couldn't get anything to agree with him, so they finally settled on goats. And the doctor okayed the goat's milk. So my dad got a goat, and I had to milk the goat and feed the goat.
So what year were you born?
21.
1921.
1921, yeah. January 23rd of 21.
Okay, so you have a big birthday coming up in January.
Oh, yeah.
And who were your parents?
Milo E. Miller and Earl Miller.
Okay.
And when he built this house, tore the barn down, he built this house, there's a lot of voids. There I was, I think it was a 9-year-old kid, the boy, and my dad just didn't realize my age, I guess. He said, you know, Glenn, if you'll shingle that house, I'll build a shop for you in the back of the garage. Well, I was a good 6 weeks shingling that house. He taught me how to strike a chalk line. But anyway, when I got it all done, he built me a shop in the back of the garage and had a vise and a hammer and a big window in the back that I could look out to the back of the property. Then in addition to that, they got a cow. Now, I had a cow to stake out and a goat to milk, but I didn't have a water problem because they get right down to the creek. So he bought a pig. You're going to butcher some piglets. And he said, Glenn, if you will go over to neighbors, which is about a quarter of a mile away, with your wagon, at that time they dumped garbage raw into the can, and gather the garbage and feed the pigs, you can have your choice of pig. When it grows up and we sell it, you can have the money. Well, so I'm hauling a couple garbage cans on my wagon over there, about 3 or 4 times a week, and gathering up garbage. One day I come back and my pig had a knot on the top of its head. And the next day it was dead. And my dad, being the businessman he was, said, that's too bad, Glenn. That's the way business goes sometimes. Keep feeding them. So that's what I did.
How old were you at that time?
Oh, I was probably 9 or 10.
Okay.
And the main story I'd like to tell you is how the trailer business got started in Elkhart County. It was in the heart of the Depression. My dad was an interior decorator, but people weren't painting the inside of their houses. And he developed a product for the car tops. The car tops were vinyl with wood framing underneath, and they'd dry out, and then they'd develop a leak, and you had to replace the framing. So he went to Flint, Michigan, at the parking lot, and checked tops as they came in, and offered to dress their top for him for so much money, and they'd pay him on the spot, and he'd get the license plate number after they all went to work, he'd go through the parking lot, paint the tops. Well, he wanted to take his family with him, so one time he built a trailer, camping trailer, in our driveway on College Avenue. And it had canvas sides, and they folded out, and there was a double bed on each side. My folks slept in one, we 3 boys slept in the other one. Had a tub up in front that drained out the bottom and a portable water tank. So we took that up to Flint, Michigan, parked in the school lot, because the school lot had an outside pump and an outside toilet. And we were there about 3 or 4 days, and a carload of guys pulled in, wanted to buy the trailer to go deer hunting. So I sold them the trailer for $90. And then he started it, but with the agreement that he could live in it until he got another one built. So he started building another one right on the spot. Well, these boys told somebody else about it, and they came by and bought the second one. So we came home to Mishawaka. He went to the lumber yard and rented a spot, started building trailers. And that was probably in 1933. Well, that grew to the place they moved to Elkhart on Harrison Street in a barn. And he had got acquainted with Wilbur Schultz, made Wilbur Schultz his sole distributor, and started building trailers there. And he made plywood outside and covered it with vinyl. He'd send me across the street to the bakery to get a gallon of honey. That's what he glued the vinyl on with. And when it'd get warm, it'd run out the bottom of the trailer and the flies would gather around it. So he got that corrected finally. But in 1936, well, he had a big plant building 3 a day for Wilbur Schultz in the old carriage building. And Wilbur Schultz came to him one day and said, "Milo, I'm either going to buy you out or start a plant on my own." So Dad sold out to him. Went down and rented down the basement of the same building, was going to start another trailer factory. And Schultz found out about it and bought the building and kicked him out. So we went across town on Beardsley, and there was a building over there that had Elkhart coach, Elkhart on the side of it. That's where the old Elkhart was built. He rented the upstairs of that building and started another trailer factory and called it Elkhart Coach. Sold that out to a guy by the name of Jerry Wiles in Chicago. And then in 1936, we moved to Huntington because Huntington had a car barn for the Erie Railroad that wasn't being used. My dad rented that, and we started another trailer factory called National Trailer. And times were so tough that the sales manager he had built some living quarters, this place to sleep in the stockroom of that business, and that's where he slept and had his clothes and where he bathed and everything. He lived in there for a while till he was able to rent a room downtown. Anyway, they were building 3 a day. I think I was a junior in high school. And I was working at the trailer factory, hanging the doors and doing all the hardware and putting in the cook stove and the heating stove. And school was getting ready to start. So I went inside to my dad and said, "If you won't hire somebody," they're building 3 a day, "you won't hire somebody to do that, I'll do it for so much per trailer." And I cut the price from the hourly rate, from 8-hour hourly rate, and he agreed to it. So school would let out and I'd take off for the factory and doing 3 hours what used to take me 8. Well, my dad caught on to that pretty quick. So he started charging me $7.50 a month room and board. And then he put the whole factory on piece rate. And he outgrew those quarters, So we moved to Elwood in 1939 because there was a glass factory there that was huge, and he started a factory that had around 450 employees and was building 22 units a day. This is during the heart of the Depression and couldn't keep up with the orders. And I had 3.5 years in high school, and I didn't want to go to another high school. So I had enough credits to graduate, so I just went back in 42 and got my graduation. But anyway, why is it that plant, the sales office was separate from the factory office. And after I seen the employees going from the plant over to the main office. And I stepped out of the door one day and said, "Hey, Dolan." Dolan Young was this guy's name. "Come here, I want to talk to you." So he came in and I said, "What's going on?" Well, he said, "Your dad gave us preferred stock for Christmas and it's got tax on it. And we can't afford to pay the tax. So we're selling it back to him at 50 cents on the dollar." Well, we had a dealer in Detroit, and he and I were a good friend, Frank McDonald. Frank built trailer parks and boomed as a dealer, you know, and had lots in Florida, and I'd go to Florida with him. So we were real buddies. But anyway, I called Frank McDonald and told him what was going on. Said, "I want to borrow some money, Frank." "How much you want?" I said, $3,000. "It's yours," he said.
This would have been when you were about 18 years old?
Yeah. No, I was older than that. That was, you know, that was probably 1941, maybe.
Okay.
So then in 42, I went into the Air Corps. I knew I was going to get drafted. So I went, they said, "Since you don't have a college education, you got to take an exam." So I had to go to Fort Wayne, take the exam, in which I passed. So I got in the Air Corps. And that was in November. I left November of 42.
I think I heard that you had to kind of go back a second time
Yeah,
for
well,
your
yeah.
physical.
When they inducted me, I lacked about a half a pound of weighing enough. So the sergeant said, he said, "Come back tomorrow morning early. In the meantime, go to the mess hall and get 4 bananas. Eat those tomorrow morning before you go to the bathroom. Come in first thing and I'll weigh you again." So I passed the weight test. But I served in the Pacific, and from November of 42, of course we had to go through school, you know, for pilot training. But I got out in March of 46. Was in, when we first went over, we went to Hollandia, New Guinea. Then we went to the island of Biak, which is just off the northern tip of New Guinea. Then we went to Peleliu, which was just above Biak. And from Peleliu, we went to Leyte in the Philippines. From Leyte, we went to Okinawa. Okinawa to Tachikawa, Japan. You probably can't print this, but Tachikawa, Japan was training grounds for the Japanese Air Force. And under the runways was the factory building building ammunition. And the town was nothing but a bunch of geisha houses because of the military being based there. So we had nice quarters and the whole works and hangars, you know. And so we flew out of there.
This would have been after VJ Day.
After
the peace.
No, armistice signed, I think, on September the 5th.
Right. Was this before that or after that?
Well, I didn't move up there until the 6th, I think.
Okay.
It was signed on the 5th, and I flew 11th Airborne. You can't print this anyway. And on the 6th, and their job was to make sure the GIs that were coming in there went to the pro stations after they had their fun in the whole houses.
Yeah.
And so that was my experience. Then that's how the trailer business got started.
Okay. So you did a couple of different things as a pilot. What were some of the different things you did as a pilot?
Oh,
What types of planes did you fly? And...
well, the main thing was probably the C-46, and that was a freight. But they brought B-25s over to BIAC aboard ship because they didn't have the range to fly them over. And they would assemble them there. And then I got a part-time job of taking them up and testing them after they assembled them. Well, the crew chief that assembled the plane, that was his plane. And at that time, the trim tab for the tail was a wheel right here, just vertical. You just spin, and I used to take off with that trim tab. That controlled the back elevators. Well, once in a while, they'd get that twisted, you know. So I started going out to the line, and I'd say, "Is it ready to go?" And he'd say, "Yes, sir." I'd say, "Okay, get aboard." Well, if he fumbled around a little bit, I didn't take it. I knew there was more to do.
So you have you have a photograph here of some stuff.
Oh, the big one?
Well, no, I was talking about down here that
those are
that your wife
ribbons, and
brought
I
out.
don't know if I can even tell you what they're for anymore. That photograph there was taken, the one in uniform was taken in Japan.
Okay. And the plane, what plane is that a picture of?
Oh, that one. There's a C-46 and a B-25 there.
Okay.
Hold it up. I want to see that. Oh, yeah. This is the front of the B-25, and that's the gunner's in here, and that's the side view. You know.
Okay.
I think that's a 46. 46 was a strictly freight.
So that was a picture of you then that
Yeah.
was taken in
Yeah.
Japan.
Weighed all 138.
Okay. And then a number of medals.
Well, my youngest daughter insisted I do that. They're not all on there because they lack space to do it. But, you know, these are ribbons that you wore. There's 3 more medals that I'm entitled to that are not in there.
Very impressive.
No, not to me.
So then after the war, when you came back,
When we came back,
now did you have a girlfriend while you were,
I was married.
You were married the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I got married in January of the former year.
So before you went into the
Yeah.
Air Corps,
Yeah, I was married almost a year when I went in.
okay.
When we came back, I had a brother 4 years younger than I. We were the best of buddies, and he and I started the ready mix plant in Goshen. And I would have been about 47 or 8, probably 47.
And that was the one out on Logan Avenue, you said?
Logan, you know where Logan is?
Right. Mhm.
You know, it's now filled up. Then it was an industrial Shasta trailer was being built back there then. And Logan Fuel was back there. Well, I had to go to Salem Bank. Oh, I don't think you can print this. Had to go to Salem Bank because I needed $40,000 to start that ready mix plant. And Ed Stout was the head of the loan officer. And he said, "No, I can't loan you the money, Glenn." He said, that'll never go in Goshen. So I went to Elkhart and got a hold of Lloyd Meanix, a guy by the name of Lloyd Meanix. He loaned me the $40,000. And we kept the employees on during the winter and paid them full wages. So that, you know, so they could live and we'd have them for the spring. Well, I couldn't meet the payments. So I got a letter from the First National Bank of Elkhart. They're going to take all the trucks in the ready mix plant. And I got all excited. I knew a guy by the name of Bill Kerfin who owned National Plywood, and he supplied us at the trailer industry. And he had an office in Chicago. He lived in Chicago. So I jumped in the car and went to Chicago, called him, of course, and he took me to his bank. It was a huge bank right downtown. And we walked up these steps, never will forget, real wide, and I had a couple of guards standing up at the top, into the president of the bank's office. And Bill Kerfin said, "Tell him your story." And I did, and he leaned back in his chair and laughed. He said, "You're from a small town, Glen. They don't want your ready mix plant. Go back and get the papers, take it in, throw it on his desk, and say, there you are." He said, "They'll redo your loan to your satisfaction. You figure out what you want, and they'll redo it." So that's what I did, and that's what happened.
So you would have still been in your 20s back then if it would have been in the late 40s?
Yeah, that would have been about 48, probably.
Okay.
We sold out to Louis in 54.
So you were the first ready mix plant in Goshen.
Oh, yeah.
And so do you think, did that help contribute to the growth of Goshen as a community, do you think? Or
Do what?
did having a ready mix company in Goshen, how did that affect the local economy? Was that necessary during the 50s? Were a time.
Oh, the ready mix plant really boomed, Doug.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was, I made a mistake by selling that to Louis Fiddler. But the circumstances at the time kind of forced that sale. But, you know, Louis, he moved that plant.
Yeah, he had the
He built a plant out by his gravel pit.
right.
We were buying sand and gravel. What I should have done was merge it with him. But that's all hindsight, you know.
Have you been out to Fiddler Pond since that's opened?
No, I have not. No.
Yeah.
Then that's the best part of my life, I guess.
Yeah. And I know you said that those were all Elkhart County area experiences, but then in later years, you spent time around a lot of different places working for other people, running plants in California and Florida. And
no, I never did much in Goshen after I sold the ready mix plant. I got a job with Skyline. They had a plant at Howe, Indiana, and it was a remodeled chicken house. They dug the floor out and made it recessed it enough that you could run a line of trailers down through it. Well, our DCO and a carload of his haunches showed up one day. Said, "Glen, we're going to build you a new plant. Where do you want it?" I said, "Well, there's a vacant spot up by the toll road." And so they bought that spot and built us a new plant. The new plant could get 14 in the line. That was run sideways line, you know. And Riblet built a frame shop down there next to that plant. After we were gone, you get 14 in the line. The rule of thumb is if you can get 14 in the line, you can get 14 a day out. Well, we were getting 20 a day out. And, you know, it was behind on orders. We didn't have room to store the material. We had trucks lined up all the time, every day, delivering material. So Art told everybody at Skyline, leave Glen alone. So that was a really successful operation. But I think I left that in, I think it was 79.
And that's where they were building single wides? And
Single wides,
and
12 wides.
12 wides,
yeah.
And didn't you do something to increase the
Oh,
size of the unit there?
yeah. we started building a 14 wide. That meant the rack, you had racks that lowered on a 12 wide to work on the roof. That meant those racks had to spend 1 foot on each side. And Skyline was working on that to do that. And I was standing out there looking at that one day. We had a guy whose name was Bill Lyons, a maintenance man. Bill was single, kind of dirty, but he was kind of a genius on maintenance. He come up and he said, "What are you looking at, Glenn?" So I said, "Well, I'm trying to figure out how to spread that rack 1 foot on each side, so it got 2 more feet to build a 12 wide trailer." And he said, "Well, do this, this, this." So all he did was put a cam up there that you pulled the lever, twisted the cam and spread them out, you know. They were already built for that. And then pull it the other way and it pulled them back together. You had to redo it a little bit. You had to put in some drive shafts, you know. So from then on, the ironworks in LaGrange that furnished me all the material to do that, Skyline got all this for all their plants, got the parts from them. So that was good for them.
Mm-hmm. So who were some of the industry leaders that you worked with who might have had an influence on you, or you had an influence on them? You mentioned
Stuart Gardner, Stuart Coach. I started a factory of my own in Syracuse, but had to sell it. And why did I have to sell that? Oh, because my brother stayed in the service, and they called him back into service, so I had to go back to Goshen and run the ready mix plant. Mm. And I was with North American Marine for a while as sales manager. Mm-hmm. I remember in, why can't I think of the year? Bob Myers and his wife's name was Tony. And we got to be the best of friends. But anyway, I had to list the make of the type boat and the colors and the whole thing for a year in advance. So I went into the office and told Bobby, I said, "I think you got a depression coming."
This was for what product? Was this for?
This is a boat company.
Boat company.
Yeah. I said, "I think we better cut production and make just what we know we got sold." "Oh no," he said, go ahead and make up the future order. Well, we're going to be okay." I said, "Okay, I'll see you through the first show." So after the first show, I forget what I did, but I left. 3 months later, that plant was broke. Mm. They discontinued operation. Mm. Oh, I know what I did. I got with a guy that was importing stuff from Japan. And I opened up a plant that had mobile home and boat hardware. And I opened it up in a building that was used as a storage building for a moving company down on 3rd Street.
This was in Goshen? Or
in Goshen.
Okay.
Yeah. And that proved out real well for me.
You were involved with houseboats at one point?
Oh, I designed a houseboat from the ground up. And my brother, Charles, had a plant in Middlebury making trailers, boat trailers. And he had room, and I built it there. This houseboat had floats on it, and you could pull them in and make it a 10 wide. Or 10, I think it was 8. Make it an 8 wide for traveling. No, 10 wide for traveling. Once you got there and unloaded the trailer, the 2 floats pushed out on each side and made a 12 wide out of it. So you had a walkway around the whole cabin. Well, I had a dealer in Florida. I think he probably, between a couple of dealers, they sold about a half a dozen of them. And then the bottom dropped out of the economy. And I dropped that and did something else. But anyway, there was an outfit in Tennessee that bought one of them and saved it. And after the economy started picking up, they started building the same boat and boom. But I never patented anything that I started.
Yeah.
And the plant in California, Marner and I owned that together.
And Marner was what relation to you?
Marner was a half uncle. He was a half brother of my dad. Marner Miller.
Right.
He had travel equipment.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And he also had the ambulance company at one point.
Had what?
An ambulance company.
Well, that was part of travel equipment. Yeah. That's another story. You don't. I remember when he's thinking about selling that. I advised him not to. Anyway, that plant in California was really unique. They would take a Dodge minivan and spread it 14 inches. They'd cut the thing in two on the passenger side, full length. Hood, front axle, rear axle, everything. And then put it back together 14 inches wider. That way you can make a bus out of it and sit two people on each side instead of two and one, see?
So this would have been early in the van
so
conversion
we were
business,
doing that. And we did the same thing with a mini motorhome. We put the chassis up there, cut it two lengthwise, widened it out 14 inches. So our mini motorhomes were 14 inches wider than a regular one. Well, I think it took me 8 months to make that company profitable. E.B. Yoder was my sales manager, by the way. And Marner one day, Marner was paying them, TEC was carrying the insurance, and Marner was doing the payroll. Simply because he had an office and a way to do it. He called me one day and he said, I'm out of money, Glenn, close the plant. Well, you know, he was meeting buying the materials. He was furnishing the cash to buy the materials. So I called a guy in Napanee that was trying to get to be the biggest in the industry. And what was his name? He'd come out to see Ebe once in a while. Anyway, I told him, I said, you want to have a business in California? He said, I've been thinking about that, Glenn. What do you got in mind? I said, I'll tell you what, you come out, I'll take inventory, you pay me for the inventory, and it's yours. So he said, I'll be out next week. So he showed up with the guy and his wife and a kid in the car, so I knew he was going to buy. Well, the sale didn't amount to anything. It was only $380,000 worth of material and stuff. But at least it salvaged Marner a little bit. And then I called back, so I didn't have anything to do. So that's when I started doing options again. Options came out in 1973, and I don't really know why they came out with it. Mid 1973, I even went to Chicago at that time, took lessons. So every time I didn't have anything to do, I would do I'd do options on the market. So I've done them all.
Yeah. Don't know if you want to record this or not, but Diana Miller was telling me that you had your I guess it was your tonsils taken out when you were a kid, and there was a story associated with that.
Well, you know, they looked at kids different back then. That would have been, we lived on Capitol Avenue. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. They had an Elkhart doctor, Dr. Miller. And my folks had some business in Michigan. So they made arrangements with Dr. Miller to take my tonsils out and circumcise me. And they dropped me off at his office, and they took off for Michigan. Well, they'd hang you if you did that today, you know. So left me at his office. So he took my tonsils out, and his knife must have slipped because he cut off the uvula too, and circumcised me. And they put me in a room to recover. And my folks made arrangements with my aunt and uncle to pick me up and keep me there till they got back from Michigan. They'd pick me up and take me home. Well, they came to the doctor's office and they forgot where they put me. I was in a little room, almost just nothing but a closet back there. So they finally found me. And they took me home, and then my folks stopped and picked me up and took me back to Mishawaka. But I don't think they allow that today.
Yeah. So you, I know you had two daughters because one of your daughters was in class.
Was it what?
One of your daughters, Pam, was in my class in high school.
Yeah.
And then she died quite young, if I
I think
remember
she
right.
was
Yeah.
38, 31 or 38. I forget. I have to look it up.
Yeah.
I think she was 38. I remember we were walking down the shopping center. We'd come back from California and stay at her house. She had a big house in Evanston. She had her own business. She had a antique shop that she had a black guy running, and she had a accounting business. And the office was in that house upstairs. She was just remodeling the place to move the office in. And she had a cancer of the blood, but she was on a medication that was keeping her alive and pretty well. And then she had to have some extensive dental work done, and that upset the white corpuscles in her body. And we come up from Florida, and they took her in about midnight one night in downtown Chicago in the hospital. We went down and sat there all the rest of that night until the afternoon of the next day and watched her die. They couldn't stop it. The dental work upset the white corpuscles, started eating up the insides of her body, and they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I got a younger daughter, 4 years younger than she. Name's Margot. Margot, well, she turned 70, or she just turned 70, didn't she? She just turned 70. Her birthday was in October. Margot married a guy. Margot worked for Kemper Financial, and I couldn't keep her in college. I got her up to the junior year, and about the second month in her junior year, she called me in my office in Florida and said, Dad, I'm gonna quit this and go get a job. I give up. I said, okay, Margot. So we went to Chicago and got an apartment and carpeted it and bought the furniture for her. She moved in and got a job at Kemper Financial. After about, I think it was close to 4 years, she was in charge of the brokers, had a private office in charge of the brokers.
So it sounds like your family has quite a history of being
Oh, they were all entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
risk takers.
That's I'd hate to try to count up all of the startups I had. They weren't all successful. I had a bad habit of starting something. As soon as I got going good, I'd get tired of it. And we were going to Florida in the winter after I sold the plant in California and moved back to Elkhart. When we moved back to Elkhart, we bought a house over there that wasn't built yet. And I wanted to pay for it with a credit card from Merrill Lynch, but Merrill Lynch didn't allow that. So I had to get some cash and pay for it. But anyway, then we started going to Florida. Well, next thing I know, I had a sign shop going, an accounting firm going, another office that I owned, interest in a bank, and an embroidery machine business. And I couldn't come home. So we got an apartment down there, and my wife came home and sold this one. And we moved the furniture down. Then we moved once in Florida. And I finally sold all. I remember the office that I bought. One of the banks had some help in there, and 3 months after I bought it, it was owned by a Canadian. He came over and wanted to know whether I wanted to buy the office. And I offered him $8,000 less than what he was asking, and he took it. Well, 3 months after I bought it, the outfit moved out. And I had an attorney. I went and said, why don't you come over and look at that office? You can have it for nothing down, 10 years to pay for it, and 10% interest. And he took me up on it. And then the young man I had running the accounting firm died unexpectedly, and it was right during the beginning of the tax season. And I had a guy in town that was at the sign shop getting a sign because he wanted to open an accounting firm from Canada, Louis. So the guy in the sign company called me, and I said, send him over. And Louis came over. I said, Louis, if you'll keep me out of trouble, I'll give you the business, and you rent the office from me. Eventually you can buy it. So that was that arrangement. He did. Only had 2 guys that gave me a hard time, knew that I was the majority owner, and I had to pay them off. So I've had an interesting life, Doug.
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about your connection to Pine Manor.
Oh.
Because Pine Manor, after you came back
Right.
from the service, that had been in the Ernie Martin family, I guess.
Right, Lamar Martin.
Lamar
Okay.
Martin.
When my dad was in the trailer business in Huntington, or in Elwood, he had a half-brother in Iowa, Annis. You remember Annis Miller?
Sure.
So he bought a farm out there by the airport because he figured eventually he'd sell out in Elwood and move back to Goshen. Well, right at the time Lamar Martin fell on hard times, and Lamar Martin owned all the land on both sides of the road, from Kircher Road to Waterford. You remember? Mm-hmm. Remember when all that land across the road from Pine Manor was vacant?
That's
well,
the area
my dad, when he sold out of this trailer business, because he had, during the war, they couldn't manufacture for resale. They had to manufacture for the Army, which he did. Anyway, he bought Pine Manor from Lamar Martin, which included this 450 acres back here, for $75,000. Well, I guess in '45, that was probably a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But it had 3 big brick houses on it,
Yeah.
And then he sold out to somebody, and he brought Annis back. They started a hatchery and a processing plant for turkeys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember when, I think it's where the first Walmart in Goshen was built, that originally had been a turkey farm out there.
Yeah.
On that area. And then, so that really is the
across the street was a former mayor of Goshen, had a meat market.
Ray Messick.
But they were raising about 40,000 birds a year there on that empty lot, about where NIPSCO is now. You remember NIPSCO built on this property. That's an aerial view before they built. But And my dad sold out for some reason, got rid of the whole thing. I never did figure that out because I never had anything to do with it. They one time wanted me to come to work for it, but I didn't want to work for Uncle Annis,
Yeah.
with Uncle Annis. And that thing, those two big barns, Annis put made a turkey barns out of those and burned them both down. That road you see is 15.
Right.
It goes across the front of it. That's before Howard Warner built his house back there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the top of the picture, running across there would be Kircher Road.
Yeah, you can
Right.
see the railroad there.
Yes. Mhm.
But they raised turkeys back there.
Yeah.
You were personally involved in quite a few different enterprises.
Yeah.
I mean, you had your hands in quite a bit. How many do you think it was altogether over the years?
I think I counted up one time. I told her 33, but I think it was more like maybe 28 or 30. I haven't really sat down and listed them. I thought, you know, I watched my dad, and I thought the only way to make money is you had to be in business for yourself. So I thought nothing of starting a business. I mean, that was just the thing to do.
So as you look at the RV industry here, and
Oh my, that's really consolidated. Yeah. That's really consolidated. But you know what? There's a little guy over here in the industrial section. I think he's got about equal to about a 4-car garage, building one of the little old-fashioned trailers. Are you acquainted with the industry at all?
not much.
Well, at one time down on Logan Street, Shasta had a trailer factory there. And if you built that Shasta today, I bet you couldn't keep up with the orders. It's entirely, honey, there's a book laying on beside my desk. I'd like to show it to you.
I
It's on
remember.
the trailer industry.
I remember Shasta was famous for the little wings
Yeah.
at the back that they put on, and
Yeah.
my wife's brothers worked there for about 2 or 3 days, and then figured out that working the trailer factory wasn't for them, and they quit, and they didn't even worry about getting their pay. They just gave
Yeah.
up on it. Yeah.
Well,
that's where the recycling is now.
the trailer industry's problem today is they can't get them delivered. I wondered why they kept saying the trailer industry is booming, dealers are begging for them, but there's a big lot sitting over here waiting for the trailers to be delivered. And one of the guys told me that over 200 guys quit delivering trailers. Yeah, I think that shut my air off. That's the reason I'm talking so much.
It's not shut off.
So this is the book you wanted to.
Yeah, this is on the RV, and this is Hessenberg. When they first started the Hall of Fame over at Elkhart, he was in charge, and he wrote that book. My dad's in there, known as the school teacher of the industry. If you go over to the Hall of Fame, they'll want to show you a movie. And when they turn out the lights, this sound comes on and it says, here's the gentleman that started the industry in Elkhart County, and my dad's picture comes up. So I go back a long ways. At one time, I knew all those guys personally in that book as a kid, because I worked at the trailer factory as assistant to the sales manager, and they'd take me to the travel, what do they call that? Travel Trailer Industry Association or something like that. They had their own association, you know. And all those guys who started trailers, I knew them personally.
What do you think your dad brought to this location that helped all of this industry spring from?
Well, he brought the trailer manufacturing industry to this area. Bach, Bach frames. And I remember when Bach had a building there on Main Street, corner of Lusher and Main, building frames for my dad's trailer factory just down the line. From that, just a couple blocks down the line, Dexter Axle, got axles, axles and wheels. That industry has really grown, but it's really consolidated like the automobile industry did. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The big one now is, what?
Well, there are three big ones now. The
Yeah.
three big ones are Thor, Forest River, and Winnebago.
Yeah, well,
And
you got
those three own most of
Winnebago.
them.
That's an old line RV.
Yeah.
We had he's married to one of my nieces, Charles's daughters. They decided they wanted a Winnebago. Well, the only one that had the model that they wanted was a dealer in Florida. That dealer paid their plane fare down for them to pick up so they went down to Florida and got the Winnebago and drove it home.
Recently,
And that's why
just recently.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Just
so
recently.
in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But the trailer business is booming because of the virus. People don't want to stay at the hotels.
So what do you think is ahead for the industry then?
Do what?
What do you think is ahead for the industry?
What industry?
What is ahead for the RV industry?
Oh,
What's the future?
well, my personal opinion is that after this virus thing gets settled, they might hit another lull. They hit a lull every once in a while. I used to watch the boat business. When the boat business slowed up, I'd slow up the operation of the trailer factory. And I think it's an industry that comes and goes. I think it'll, how can they build the amount of trailers they're building now? And who's buying them is the young people coming up because they can finance them for 15 years. Well, what are they going to do when some of those come due? I think they'll get us slowed up one of these years as soon as they get the current disease settled a little bit. I'm glad I'm not in business today.
Yeah. So 100th birthday coming up here.
Oh, if I make it.
My wife is planning a big party, so you've got to make it.
I'd like to make it for Donna. I'm glad Donna's here. If Donna wasn't here, I'd be in a nursing home. And talking about nursing home, you took out a long-term care policy?
Mm-hmm.
I have two, but it costs me $12,000 a year, over 12. And I pay it, but I don't know why. If I go in there, I'm not going to last a year.
Yeah.
Well, Glenn, is there anything else you want to?
Oh, I think I've done enough talking. I'm enjoying life. I don't have any financial problems, and I got a wonderful second wife, Donna. My gosh, God really blessed me there.
Well, we certainly are grateful for you taking the time to
Well.
share some of your memories and insights from your almost 100 years of living
I'm
here.
grateful. I hope the people that view it enjoy it, and I'm surprised that Doug promoted it.
Well, I've heard enough of your stories over breakfast and like that over the
Yeah.
years, so I thought those stories were worth retelling.
My brother Lamar married his high school sweetheart, so he was in Elwood, then went into the infantry. He's in Europe, and he had it tough during the war. Well, when he was due to come home, the war was over, due to come home, this gal had moved back to Tennessee. And she was in a car on her way to Ripple Depot to pick him up and got in an accident and killed her. And I remember we picked him, the family picked her up and buried her because Lamar's time didn't permit to go to the funeral. I remember we brought Lamar back to the graveyard in Tennessee. He stood there and looked at that tomb about 10 minutes. Said, okay, let's go. So we left. But infantry experience ruined his lungs, so I remember talking, he and I were the best of buddies. And he moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I remember we went out to see him a couple of times, but I remember one time I was talking to him on the phone. Said, how's it going, Lamar? Well, he said, you know, I'm going to die pretty soon, but I'd rather not know. So I'm about the same position he was. I'd rather not know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Glenn,
Oh,
for
you're
sharing your
welcome.
stories with us.